And welcome from Mike Davidson at 3M headquarters for the UK here in Bracknell, which is to the west of Heathrow. I have with me today Caroline White, who is one of the business development people out there, and we've got something that I think you're going to find extremely interesting indeed. And this is a long, long way removed now from the typical TV on a wall with a PowerPoint. So I just want to give a quick introduction to what she's doing before we move forward. Firstly, those of you out there, they're probably representatives of enterprise-type organisations, they're advisors and vendors in the industry. I think this is really something that you should be aware of, and it's going to become increasingly important over the next few years. And why is that? Well, certainly when we talking about return on investment, this is something that is going to make a lot of organisations a lot more efficient, a lot more organised. We're talking these days about a knowledge-based environment that we work in. And that knowledge base is firstly internal. There's vast pools of knowledge out there in your database, but also, even more importantly, it's the information your employees hold within their heads. And the other factor to consider for your knowledge is external. Your competitors, your customers, with the onset of social media, a lot of, they can certainly influence things, and even your suppliers. And a lot of this leads to information overload. So what are we talking about here? We're looking at increasing the efficiency of communication across every part of your organisation. And by that, you're going to learn how to sweat the assets. In other words, you've spent an absolute fortune building this information. Why not make use of it now? The hard part of that is actually getting the corporate knowledge out of your employees. How do you bring that together? And that's what you're going to learn. We're also talking about external information, allow your people to better understand the changes in what is becoming an increasingly fluid marketplace. Trends, really important that you keep up with them, both to take advantage of opportunities and also to defend against threats. And then we talk about improving the decision-making process. What you're about to hear here is going to make a major difference to the way decisions are made. And smarter decisions means greater profits. And empowering employees, getting them to feel part of, they know the full picture, they know what's going on, they value their role. This certainly will help there. And the other thing you're going to learn here is that it actually improves your ability to train your employees. And I say train, they do it in an almost unconscious way. They understand what's going on and so on. So that's what you can be prepared for today. And what I would like to do is to hand over now to Caroline, welcome her, and talk about this design-driven innovation. Caroline?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for calling in. I really look forward to talking to you about how we approach digital technology in corporate spaces in 3M GTG. Let me first introduce my company. We are digital communication experts committed to creating high-quality, sustainable, and most of all flexible, innovative digital solutions for our clients. I think most of you are probably somewhat familiar with our parent company, 3M. But 3M GTG is a natural extension of our existing business in display and graphics. The 3M GTG head office is based in Munich, but we do have several design teams in key strategic locations such as Dubai, Shanghai, and Taipei. But to describe simply what we do, we create turnkey digital solutions for out-of-home, with out-of-home being defined as pretty much anywhere that's not your couch at home, including places like shopping centres, retail outlets, airports, outdoor spaces, and of course corporate buildings, which is the area that I want to focus on today. Our service offering is based around these three elements on the slide. Our project team in Munich have a unique combination of skills in both hardware and software engineering, but also conceptual design and communication strategy. So these skills combined enable us to take into account the causal relationships between the hardware and the software at a really early stage in the process of any digital project. I guess you could call it a holistic approach, but this holistic approach enables us to create digital within a greater environment, whether that's a physical environment or an IT environment. But we also work on the concept, right, from the concept right through to execution, and then the after-sales care when that's necessary. But having said that, we do work in partnership with other companies such as architects, agencies, and often integrators as well, and we can happily do part of a process where the other part is already being covered by you. Regarding this radical design mindset, our work is always user-focused, but it also takes into account the greater environment that the technology will come into play. Often technology is placed in a company in an almost standalone way, and this is something that we really try and avoid by carefully considering design at the very early stages of any project and approaching the total space in this holistic way. And just a little bit about the projects we do. From our side, we always aim to evoke viewers' fascination, capture their attention, and through a combination of both of those, communicate efficiently using technology as the catalyst. So those are three things that we always try to achieve regardless of the initial objectives of any given project. So today I'd like to talk to you about building digital infrastructure into corporate environments in particular. As technology has been progressing and organizations evolve, there's been some clear problems or challenges that corporations have been facing. Here are some of the comments that we frequently hear. I'm sure you either have the same concerns as a company yourself, or you hear similar comments from your own clients. But on top of these issues, there's an ever-expanding wave of data. There's been such an explosion in the number of devices and independent platforms, and the way people interact with digital, the way they use their mobile phones, the way they use their PCs, whether they're using a PC at all anymore, they may just be on a tablet. But also there's been a massive increase in the sheer volume of communication data and the way people consume it. The access and control of this data is itself a major issue for companies, because right now they're spending a lot of time, money, and resources just simply trying to get the right data to the right people and trying to control that data, or at the very least find it in the first place. So at 3MGTG, we've found that our holistic approach helps us to create digital infrastructure in a way that overrides these issues, I guess. But for example, just to give you one case, on paper an LED looks really, really expensive compared to a static poster giving the same message. But if that LED actually provides an interactive experience for visitors in a really brand immersive way, its value becomes something completely different. I don't know if any of you have seen the Wynn Hotel LED in Las Vegas. This is one of our projects from a few years ago, but you can easily check it out on YouTube whenever you have a little bit of time. For this project, we created a big kinetic sleeve that slides up and down the LED, interacting with the content as it moves. So as an LED on its own, the installation was really expensive comparative to value, but by using our knowledge of what technology could do in the eyes of the user, or in this case the eyes of the viewer, we created something really different just by adding this interactive sleeve, and the value of the LED overall increased multiple times. I think the proof of this is that that LED in Las Vegas won Billboard of the Year for 2 years running, which is quite an achievement in an environment where digital display is absolutely everywhere. But 2 years in a row we did get Billboard of the Year in Las Vegas for that. So I think you can see the value there. But also there's the issue facing corporates of the management of content, and I'm quite sure again you have a lot of questions about this when you're talking about putting digital into a corporate space. We've overcome this issue by creating what we call a semantic database, and I'll talk to you about that a little bit more shortly. Finally, we also have the issue of how to get staff talking to each other, and this again will be central to my discussion later on in the slides. So I'll talk to you a little bit more about how to get people conversing and collaborating in spaces in the next part. In terms of return on investment, in a corporate building it's not the financial benefit that you're looking for, but an organizational one usually. Each company's objectives are so different when you start out that it's really difficult for me to provide an overall type of ROI that you can expect. But in most cases, organizational efficiencies are the greatest instant outcome. By that I mean that you can find better ways of managing and creating content for organizational consumption, and also higher levels of collaboration, communication, and sharing among the employees of the organization. In the long term, systems can be designed to be flexible to changes of the organization, but also that can be add-ons in software or functionality, or it can be about easily uploaded content onto platforms that are really well integrated into the environment, so that there's little need to update the systems, just the content. And that's where the holistic approach becomes, again, really important, to understand what digital you're putting into the environment and making it seamless with the environment, so that it's not the technology that stands out, it's the actual functionality or the user experience. So let me take you through a current project that we have at 3M GTG just to illustrate some of these points. So this is a project that 3M GTG are doing at the 3M headquarters in Minnesota. The objectives set for this project were to create an environment that promotes connectivity and interaction between employees in order to contribute to the company's success. Also to build familiarity with the brand, so basically internal branding. And finally, to connect people in order to drive innovation and knowledge throughout the organization, regardless of which department or business unit they're actually affiliated with. Our goal in order to achieve these objectives was to take data out of this box, and the boxes we see as being individual office cubicles where people are sitting with all their information on either their laptop or their smartphone, sometimes even in their drawers, and also the data storage systems of any given company. As in any company, there are so many different types and sources and formats of data, and some are internal and some are external. Some are currently external formats that corporations are trying to use as an internal system, but the list is endless. And in 3M as an organization, we use an intranet called the source, but we also use LinkedIn, Facebook, Dropboxes. A huge amount of different types of and formats of data is constantly flowing through our company. All this data needs to be kept somewhere, and we imagine that as a metaphorical silo. But there are so many different silos. As an added complexity to this, often there's only a few specialized people who know which data is where and in which silo, meaning that it becomes extremely difficult for organizations to make data content accessible to people throughout the organization. But at 3M GTG, what we've been able to do is take this data out of its silo, analyze it by its meaning, and connect it to people in a relevant way. By doing this, we can then serve back data that interests people at various touch points where they can get recommendations and they can interact with it. And they might even find some topics or information that they never thought to look for. And we call this a kind of data serendipity, I guess. But it works in the same way as maybe some of the ads you get on the side of your laptop whenever you're sending an email to a friend talking about your holidays, and the next thing you know you have holiday-related content and advertising popping up in your sidebars. But it's that analysis of and correlation of material that builds this, that makes the system work. It becomes very automated, it becomes very flexible, and it actually becomes extremely relevant, and that's the key point. In our case, this whole system was designed to function and create sharing, interaction, collaboration, and I guess education as well is an important thing, making sure people have all the knowledge and all the information available to them in the organization. And from those functional outputs of collaboration, interaction, sharing, and education, the benefits are really clear because you can create a collective employee intelligence, and also workspaces can become a very flexible thing. That's to say that they go beyond the desktop, but ultimately also ideas can be shared. And this is a really key one for 3M as a company because we're built on a culture of internal innovation, and that is one product has led to the next, has led to the next. So most of our greatest innovations have come from internal ideas in the marketplace. And I think being able to enhance that kind of an environment has been a really critical thing for 3M and our ability to continue to grow into the future. So a really key point when approaching any digital project in a corporate space or anywhere, is to first have a really good understanding of the existing systems and infrastructure before you start thinking about what technology needs to be added. For 3M GTG, a critical part of our standard process is always to do what we call a discovery phase. We find it really important that we do a full audit of the company's infrastructure, along with the workshops with key stakeholders in the organization, anyone who's important to the actual project. And those kind of people are often IT staff or project managers. We pretty much insist on people from the marketing department or anyone who's involved in the population of content for the system to attend, but also sometimes we bring in just general staff who will ultimately be the users of whatever is installed. So we get everybody together in workshops in a very early stage to learn as deeply as possible about how a system could potentially work within any given space and with the people who will actually be working with it. So the output from this discovery phase that we do then forms the backbone of all our future work on the actual concept and on what hardware and software should be installed, but also on the design, look and feel of the final installation. So it's an absolutely critical phase for us, and at this point often we're not even discussing technology. In fact, we try really hard in these workshops never to let anyone start talking about, wouldn't it be cool if we put in a projection system here or that, because at this point it's really, really not important what technology is there. It's all about understanding existing infrastructure. In the discovery phase, we also uncover, as I said, the existing IT infrastructure so that we can then leverage it and that we're not making systems that are standalone. This again is really important. It makes it much more efficient, but it also makes it much more long-term and flexible if you're already hooked into whatever systems are in place. The picture on this slide is actually of the semantic database that we've created for our project at 3M in Minneapolis, in Minnesota. It looks very complicated, and in fact there's probably no point in reading too deeply into all the little different bits and pieces. But some parts of it are existing infrastructure that the company already had, and other parts are pieces of software that we've written to combine everything and make it all work and correlate the various different data and functions of the system. So we call this a semantic database or a semantic system, and this is what we have used as the backbone of actually everything we've done in the project. It's what runs all the systems, and it's what runs the digital hardware that you actually see. Often as well, recently we've been thinking that when you're talking about digital, it used to be very much that what you could see, the screens and the exciting content, was the main part of the system, but more and more we're discovering that actually it's the drivers behind it, it's the database and the information and the systems behind it that form the major part of the iceberg. The visible bits are just like the tip of the iceberg that you can actually see. So I guess you're probably more interested in the output of the semantic systems than in discussing the depth of the technical issues of actually setting one up. But the output looks like this. This is what we've created for 3M in the US. This is an example of an info particle that has come from a Facebook posting. As a rule, there must always be a source at the center of any info particle so that you can trace it back, and also so that you can see the real people behind the information that's coming through. In this case, it's somebody called Don McGinley, which I think is just a dummy name for this one. But as you can see here, the semantic system has pulled out the key information from the Facebook page into a really easily consumable particle of information with various spin-off functions on the right-hand side. This is a standard format that we use for any info particle. So pretty much any data in the organization can be made into one through using this system, or the system does it by itself. But it can even do this for video content, which might seem a little bit strange, considering you might wonder, how does the system actually even recognize what a video is about? But that's one part of the design feature of this, is that actually the system itself recognizes what any piece of content is and reformats it into a really easily consumable piece of information. So you've seen how the 3M GTG semantic database works, but now I want to show you how we've put together touch points in order to facilitate the data that the system puts out. The project covers a vast amount of space in numerous buildings. So this is just a diagram of the 3M buildings in the US. Each of the buildings is joined by a walkway, and we've built hubs at strategic locations throughout that walkway. And here you can see a rendering of one of the hubs. On the right is a broadcast area that's designed to catch attention by the attention of passersby as infoparticles fly into the screen. Once you've actually seen some of the information that's caught your attention, then you can see touch tables down below. But I'll show you a few better pictures of that now. So this is what it would ultimately look like. And the function of the hubs as a whole is to, first of all, gain interest, then drive engagement with content and with data, and hopefully with other people, to expand out on that data and to look more deeply into your area of interest, but then also to connect people to each other or to connect you to other data. I'll just take you quickly through a typical journey of a passerby as they go through a hub. So first of all, they notice an info particle on the broadcast screens, the high-up broadcast screens that have caught their attention. Then they move to the touch table in order to engage with that byte of information. Here you can see a load of different info particles that have been flowing through as they're generated in the company. So she's chosen the one that she's interested in.
20 touch points, but they do have plans for it to support up to 60. Right now you can see it is running a four-screen display, but you can customize that. You just toggle this button here. It brings up the number of screens that you can switch. You can go to 2, and then go ahead. Here you can see this is showing off. Go to the menu. This would be for the food industry.
Now she's expanded out the information, and you can read more about your particular info particle, but at the same time the system starts suggesting back correlated material to you. So in this case, it could be an article about new age mobile phones that the girl is interested in, but whenever she's looking at that information, it's also maybe tied up with some an article that's been released about some new technology in China that will change the face of mobile phones, or anything that has relevance to the particular content she's looking at. So it becomes like a spider web of stories, and you can keep drilling deeper into your area of interest as you go along. But while working in the space, the system can also connect users with other users. So you can see here there's a common recommendation between the two people who are working separately. This is to spark conversation and to hopefully start these people collaborating about their various topics of interest. And finally, once the conversations have started, they can work together. So it's not just about looking at different pieces of information. It's actually giving people a platform where they can get together and they can start doing some brainstorming sessions. Ultimately, people who are in the company up on other floors, they can get together in groups and come down and work on these spaces as well to do some brainstorming sessions. So the whole area is built to work for people and to encourage the collaboration between people. So that's the theory and the architecture, but let me take you through the reality. I just have a few pictures here to show you that it's actually in development. This is a picture of one of the touch tables as it's being created. It looks a little bit like a rendering, but I promise you it's a real picture. It's just the guys in Munich are very tidy. The next picture is of the first prototype hub that's currently built in the 3M head office in St. Paul. I've been advised that the content is already up on that and people are already playing around on it. So hopefully soon we'd have some information on and feedback from that. But as you can see, the level of design is there. I've explained about the database that runs it, but the overall look and feel also fits in really well with the environment. So that's the Building 220 project. There are other aspects to it that unfortunately I can't discuss at the moment, as they're still in early stages. But as you can imagine, pretty much everything to do with this project, or every future part of this project, is going to be a spin-off of the semantic database that's already in place. That gives it flexibility and sustainability, and it means it can be used in the long term, and it can be changed to suit the company as it evolves as well. Finally, I just want to briefly explain how it is that we integrate this holistic approach into our process. I've already spoken about the importance of the discovery phase and how it's the most critical part of ensuring that we're looking at a project from all angles and all perspectives right from the very beginning. But here's just one slide to show you our different phases. We start with the discovery phase, and at the end of that we deliver to the client an offer for conceptual design document. This is based on the research and understanding and analysis that we've gained throughout that phase and through the workshops that we've done with the stakeholders. We only move forward when the client has physically signed off on the outline document, and then the next phase sees us develop the specific concept. At this point, we start to consider the hardware and the software that might achieve the objectives that we clarified and agreed on in the first stage of the process. And again, there's another sign-off at the end of this stage by the client, and that's done in the form of an offer for realization. So again, another document outlining how development will proceed, and prototyping and all those parts of the project. So once this is agreed on, we move into development and prototyping, and finally implementation. And again, there's sign-off after each one of these stages. There's a sign-off point. So we collaborate with our client the whole way through the process, and they're involved right the way through. And we've discovered that by sticking carefully to this process, we're able to keep the original idea of a project the same as what we actually execute in the end. We don't get lost in suddenly discovering halfway through that certain software won't work in a certain way, or that you have to change things, because the team that are working at the very, very beginning and running the workshops in the beginning are the exact same engineers that are doing the software and the hardware right the way through. So by providing this kind of a system, we ensure that there isn't gaps between how one part of the project will work with the next. It's a completely holistic approach. So I hope you found that interesting. That's my last slide for today. I think we probably have a few questions that maybe Mike will share with me.
Yeah, certainly. That was fascinating. I want to just go through now a few things. Well, firstly, what I really find exciting about this is the way it allows different people and organisations to really come together and perhaps discover things that they didn't know. And to me, that is something that is quite unique and quite revolutionary. We're all used to sort of putting together teams that go out in specific projects, but here you're almost, it's almost if you've got a giant brain behind who's picking out and suggesting things. So it must be, I would imagine, in terms of brainstorming, it must be quite a unique method of doing it.
Yes, and you're beginning to head in the direction of some of the further development of this project that we're working on, which I can't get into much detail on, but yes, we're creating some collaborative tools that are very specific to large brainstorming sessions, and that can pull information in real time along with people's discussions, conversations, the work that they're doing together, or the ideas that they're throwing together as a group, and actually start suggesting things or pointing out key parts of the conversation that maybe the people around the table haven't even noticed yet. So it's that smart system that it really enhances the way people work together. It should never take over. At the end of the day, it's always the people who are the really important part of an organization, but it certainly helps them to really understand what they're talking about and to quantify it, and also to make it a very visual thing.
Okay, we've got a question here about sort of timescales. What sort of time are we actually looking at, Caroline?
That can be really different depending on the individual project. I guess one of the things that makes it take that bit longer is the consideration stages and getting sign-off from the client. We have quite a strict schedule that we try to stick to right from the beginning. So for example, the first stage, the discovery phase, we tend to take 2 months. And within those 2 months, we do a huge amount of analysis, but we also run 2 workshops where we get together a bunch of people. So sometimes it can take a little bit of time on the side of our clients to get the right people in the room, and we would be of the opinion that it's often better to wait until you have the right people there than to push forward without the right people. So these projects are not very, very quick. They're not turnaroundable for an event in the same way as maybe some of the quick digital projects you might do for an exhibition are. But we do have quite a strict timeline that we keep to on our side, and then the rest tends to be approval within an organization, because what we're doing is often groundbreaking and does take quite a lot of buy-in from senior management.
Okay, I've got another question here from this person is actually based in Germany, and they work for quite a well-known name, which will be nameless at the moment. But do you actually work over there, and if so, what type of team do you put together?
So in head office in Germany, there's about 30 people working there. We work out of Germany, basically. We have, like I said earlier, some strategic locations where we have design teams in Asia and in the Middle East. But for the rest of Europe, we have account manager type people, or project managers, I guess, and I'm one of them. So if there was a particular project in Germany, that's very, very easily done. The teams are there permanently, and it would be run out of, and prototyping and everything would be done in Germany. For projects outside of Germany, there would be a project manager involved, and then the core team would be coming from Germany for key stages like the workshops. Then they would be working within Germany and coming again for major presentations. In terms of development, once prototypes are being made, often we will create prototypes within our facility in Germany and invite the client over to have a play with us before it goes into proper development and installation in the company. So Germany is a key location for working, but we're very flexible, and the majority of our projects have really been outside of Germany over the last few years.
Okay. I've got another question here that's made me smile a little bit, because I totally understand why this was asked, is what is a semantic database?
Now, I'm not as technical as some of the guys in Germany, so they could answer this a lot better than me. But semantics is all about the relation between signifiers, so the correlation of meaning of various different things. So in this case, we're talking about data that is correlated with other data. So it's that smart system that runs and understands what the meaning, the true meaning behind a piece of data is, and then correlates it with other data.
Okay, that's fine. I think that's hopefully that's explained it. I want to touch on another thing. It costs. I mean, certainly the project that you've described is it's certainly got a. There is a lot to it, and I wouldn't imagine it's very cheap. But if somebody perhaps wants to start off on a more modest scale and build up, is that possible?
Of course, because every project we do, we start with a discussion. And that discussion can, even at that stage, often there's no budget on the table, or the client is unable to actually specify a budget, because we're talking about long-term installations for corporations. So in terms of budget, I think that's not something to be worried about at that stage. We have a first few conversations, we talk about what the objectives are, and I think often the budget flows from that. And once an organization themselves understands what they actually want to achieve, then they can start thinking about how much they're willing to spend in order to do that. The project in the US is it's a big project. It's approximately $6 million, and please bear in mind there are parts of that project that I haven't actually shown you today, so it does run a little bit deeper than what you've seen. But at the end of the day, there are certain aspects of that we can use again. There are certain parts of knowledge that we now have, having built this kind of a database or this kind of a semantic system, that we can take and use where relevant. But it's very important to us not to be using overkill type digital infrastructure where it's not needed. So in any given organization, the budget will be incredibly different, as well as the objectives and the way it will be used. So it needs to be considered on an individual basis.
Okay, I've got another question here. It says, Caroline, we do have some very quite sizable organisations that we work with as customers, but I think the gist of it is it's quite a long question. The gist of it is that they would like to suggest something like this, but they wouldn't have a clue how to really install something like this. But firstly, do you actually work with partners such as AV integrators and so on?
Absolutely, that's no problem at all. I mean, we do need to be able to talk to the client for workshops in order to learn as much as possible, but that doesn't mean we need to be fronting the whole process. And we're very happy to work with existing companies that are working with particular clients. In the past, we've worked with architects and we've worked with designers. really not an issue for us to come in and do the bit that needs to be done, and we're very happy to work with other companies.
Okay, so certainly from what you've given today, it's there is enough for many people, many of these advisors, to go out and start opening conversations, and if conversations then progress at that stage, they would invite you in.
Absolutely, and we're happy to talk to you at any stage, even if there's no particular project on the table yet or no particular client, even just to bounce a few ideas around and to try and make sure you have an understanding of what we could potentially do, so that whenever the right project comes up, you do know that you can give us a call. So yeah, we're always happy to chat, even with no obligation.
That's great. Well, I'd just like to finish off now by thanking everybody who turned up, and especially to Caroline White 3M, which was what I found a particularly fascinating subject. And we'll sign off now and look forward to speaking to you all again in the future. Thank you.